Welcome back. Closing moments now on the program. The conversation with Mr. Adekunle Oyinloye, the CEO of Infrastructure Bank, continues. Now, thank you so much for sticking around, Mr. Oyinloye. We're talking about the private sector providing support for the government in terms of some of the key infrastructure that is needed, that should be prioritized in 2016, because from your website, we see that the Infrastructure Bank is majority owned by the private sector. Talk to us about your relationship, that is the Infrastructure Bank's relationship with the Infrastructure Concession Regulatory Commission.
Thank you very much once again, Harriet. ICRC as the acronym for the Infrastructure Concession and Regulatory Commission. It's an agency of government which is set up to facilitate best practices in the engagement of private sector with government on infrastructure development. TIB, when we act as transaction advisor or finance advisor to any concessionaire, we help them to pass through the processes of concession as laid down by ICRC. And sometimes when we do also initiate projects ourselves, any project that has revenue bearing has to pass through ICRC. And it begins with, an outline business case, which has to make sense, and ICRC grants such a project what they call outline business case certificate. And you progress from that and do further development to what they call the full business case. ICRC engenders competitiveness. So for any government asset, ICRC expects minimum of 2 or 3 different bidders seeking to take on a particular government asset, for revenue generation. So ICRC is a critical, organ of government that ensure smooth engagement between government and private sector who wants to participate in the development of infrastructure assets. So for us in TIB, they are a veritable ally. We work with them because the PPP ecosystem can only thrive with a very vibrant ICRC. And ICRC alone can't do it alone. They must have operators in the system. And TIB happens to be one of those operators that we collaborate with ICRC and make it happen. Indeed, I'm very glad to always remember, and I tell them at ICRC, that TIB, when it was urban development, assisted in the coming to being of ICRC. In fact, my predecessor in office, Akim Sanusi, was a pioneer director of ICRC, and he was a major facilitator of the building of that particular entity. So we're indeed very proud of their presence. We're indeed very proud of what they have achieved, even though we know that there's still a lot to be done. The need for private sector to, actively participate, particularly now that we do not have the resources to prosecute most of our procurement. So ICRC, for us in TIB, is a natural ally.
So based on that, which sectors should be key priority in terms of infrastructure development for 2016?
Like I said, every sector of infrastructure space is already suffering for lack of spend over the years. So it's a hard choice to make. Now, what we need to look at is in education that we will not see the need, is in water supply that we will not see the need, is in electricity, is in road. So every way you look at, there is a need to spend on infrastructure. But be it as that is made, how much do we have to spend, and how ready are the projects even for spending? Because oftentimes we think it's just the quantum of money, but most times it is also because we were not ready. Many of the projects are not ready for funding. So money will not go there, no matter how critical they look. So in 2016, electricity is still going to be a major plank, and government has to do much more because it has a wider impact. And I worry, and I've also said a lot of DFI reports also place water as one of the highest level of impact. So the city like Abuja, there are some whole parts of the cities now that probably don't have as much water as they used to have in the last 10 years or 15 years ago. And there are a number of new districts that are coming up now. I don't know how water will get to them. The city of Lagos is begging for water in most places. And I'm sure if you go to Kano, it's the same thing. If you go to Porako, it's the same thing. So water is still also going to be a major one. Now, why are we also having to take our children abroad? Is the quality of infrastructure in our schools and the quality of our lecturers. So education infrastructure also require a lot of attention. And ditto for health, we've been having health tourism with Nigerians spending hundreds of millions of dollars on an annual basis in India and other places. I think we might need to rethink and reposition our hospital and ensure that we spend less money abroad on our health. So, and all this, there's no area you look at that does not require an urgent, immediate attention. But as a practitioner, a 1 year does not define, really how we go on infrastructure. Maybe this year, this coming year, and with the first full year of this administration, will be more like putting structures in place. Yes, we will look at the low-hanging fruit, some of the projects that are currently ongoing. What can we do to them to get them to delivery? Why we put strong policy in place to ensure that going forward, we don't suffer as much as we have suffered in the past. I think that's my take on that.
Are there any spending plans for the Northeast? Because that's a very critical aspect, a critical section of the country that needs to be rebuilt.
You're very right. A lot of multilateral development partners are already thinking of spending in the Northeast. In fact, government itself, you could see what the governor of Borno is currently doing, a fantastic and amiable man. He's already rebuilding most of the liberated communities, and that is expected to continue. Federal government had to play his own role. I'm sure World Bank and other development partners will also play their role. The Northeast is a major development plan that we need to do if we are going to get the millions of Nigeria that are already internally displaced. So it's not just the Northeast. If you look at everywhere in the country, yes, Northeast has been hit by war, but if you go to several other, sections of the country, they have not been hit by war, but they've been hit by neglect and lack of spend on infrastructure. So everywhere you look, there is a need to spend money.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Adekunle Oyinloye, for sharing your thoughts with us this morning on the program. Do have a very profitable day.
Thank you very much and welcome.
Adekunle Oyinloye is his Chief Executive Officer, Infrastructure Bank, joining us from our Abuja studio and talking about developments with regards infrastructure. Very, very important if you're going to have an astronomical economic development in 2016. Well, that's it on today's edition of the program. But hey, if you missed it, you can watch it on youtube.com/channelsweb/Business Morning. And of course, don't forget to leave a comment as well. I'm Harriet Agbenyi. Have a profitable day.